All right, so today we're going to be looking at the Roman Empire
Okay.
and specifically how they expanded
Right.
from this tiny city-state to controlling like a fifth of the world's population.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
It's a wild
Yeah.
story, and it's got everything you could want in a story.
Oh, yeah?
You know, political maneuvering, military genius, even a bit of cultural magic, if you will.
I like that cultural magic.
Yeah, right?
That's a great way to put it.
So we're going to unpack all of that today.
Absolutely.
And we're going to go way beyond just the battles
Definitely.
and the bloodshed.
Way beyond.
And this deep dive is based on a podcast called Empire Unleashed: The Secrets of Rome's Astonishing Expansion.
Catchy title.
I know, right?
They did.
And it really delivers.
Good.
So let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Nope.
And neither was their empire.
True.
Where did it all begin?
Well, it all started with a very unique system of governance
Okay.
and a foundation of political savvy.
So it wasn't just about brute force.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they definitely had that in their arsenal.
Yeah.
The Roman Republic, as it was known then,
Mm-hmm.
had this incredible ability to not just conquer,
Right.
but to incorporate other cities and peoples into their fold.
Interesting.
So they were thinking long term, not just about the next battle.
So you can almost think about it like a modern day corporation.
Yes.
You know, it's kind of strategically expanding and forming alliances.
Exactly, like strategic partnerships
Yeah.
for mutual benefit.
Mutual benefit.
Yeah.
And speaking of alliances,
Yes.
they had this fascinating strategy with something called the Latin League.
Ah, yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So the Latin League is a brilliant example
Okay.
of their early diplomacy in action.
Okay.
See, in the early days of Rome,
Yeah.
they weren't the undisputed powerhouse that they would later become.
Right.
They were surrounded by other Latin-speaking city-states.
Okay.
Some friendly, some not so much. So instead of just trying to conquer them all outright,
Yeah.
which would have been incredibly costly and difficult,
For sure.
they formed an alliance.
So they were essentially teaming up with their neighbors.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The Latin League was like a mutual defense pact
Okay.
and a trade agreement rolled into one.
So it benefited everybody?
Well, in theory, yes.
Okay.
It allowed Rome and its allies to present a united front
Mm-hmm.
against external threats,
Okay.
and it boosted trade and cooperation within the region.
I see.
So this strengthened Rome's position in central Italy
Yeah.
and also laid the groundwork for their future expansion.
Wow. So it was a really key part of their early success.
Absolutely. This system of alliances, rather than just pure conquest,
Yeah.
really set the stage for how they would operate for centuries to come.
Okay, so we've got strategic alliances. We've got a strong political structure.
Hmm.
What else contributed to this early foundation of power?
Well, you can't underestimate the importance of infrastructure.
Oh, yeah. All roads lead to Rome.
Exactly. That wasn't just a clever saying.
Right.
It was a reflection of their strategic genius.
Yeah.
The Romans were masters of infrastructure,
They were.
and their roads, their aqueducts and public buildings
Right.
played a crucial role in their expansion.
Okay, so I can see how roads would be important,
Yeah.
you know, for moving troops around quickly.
Right.
But how did aqueducts and buildings factor into this?
It's all about influence and control, really.
Okay.
Imagine you're a city that's just been brought into the Roman sphere of influence,
Okay.
maybe through an alliance like the Latin League.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, the Romans are building you these amazing roads, connecting you to the rest of their growing empire.
Oh, so you're connected to trade routes and it's easier to move goods and people.
Exactly. But it's not just about practicality.
Oh, okay.
They're also building you these incredible aqueducts,
Yeah.
bringing fresh water right into your city, improving sanitation and public health.
Wow.
And let's not forget the impressive public buildings, temples, baths, forums, all showcasing Roman engineering and architectural prowess.
It's a pretty powerful message.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, look what we can do for you. Being part of the Roman world has its perks.
Exactly.
So these infrastructure projects
Yeah.
weren't just about functionality.
I see.
They were powerful symbols of Roman power and influence.
Right.
They helped to integrate conquered territories into the Roman world,
Mm-hmm.
fostering a sense of unity and loyalty.
So it made it much easier to manage their expanding empire.
Exactly.
Okay, so they're building this incredible foundation.
Yeah,
But of course, you can't talk about the Roman Empire
right.
without talking about their military.
Of course.
I mean, were they always as strong as we imagine them to be?
Well, the Roman legions are legendary for a reason,
Yeah.
but their strength wasn't simply about brute force.
Right.
It was their adaptability that made them truly formidable.
Interesting.
The Romans were incredibly pragmatic when it came to warfare. They were constantly learning from their enemies, incorporating new tactics and technologies into their own army.
So they weren't afraid to borrow a good idea from someone they'd conquered.
Not at all. Take their approach to siege warfare, for instance.
Okay.
Early on, they weren't particularly adept at besieging cities,
Okay.
but they learned often the hard way from their encounters with other cultures like the Greeks and the Carthaginians,
Right.
who were masters of siege warfare.
Okay.
They adopted and refined these techniques, becoming incredibly efficient at conquering fortified cities.
So every time they faced a new challenge, they essentially leveled up their military skills.
You could say that this constant evolution and adaptation are what made the Roman legions so effective.
Wow.
They weren't stuck in their ways. They were always looking for ways to improve and outmaneuver their opponents.
That's incredible.
It is.
So they were already shaping up to be a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm guessing their rise to power wasn't without its challenges?
Oh, absolutely. They faced some serious threats along the way,
Yeah, like who?
most notably from the Carthaginians.
Okay.
But that is the story for part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, so we left off with the Romans building this foundation of power through, savvy alliances, impressive infrastructure, and a constantly evolving military.
Right.
But as you mentioned, their rise to power wasn't without its challenges. Enter the Carthaginians.
Yes, the Punic Wars. This is where things get really interesting.
The podcast Empire Unleashed paints a pretty vivid picture of these wars.
Yeah, they were pretty epic.
What made them so pivotal for Rome?
I mean, these weren't just border skirmishes.
Right.
These were wars for survival.
Wow.
The Punic Wars were a true clash of titans.
Yeah.
Spanning over a century.
Wow.
And pushing the Romans to their absolute limits.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was brutal.
Yeah.
A costly conflict, but ultimately it shaped the destiny of Rome.
I remember learning about Hannibal.
Yeah.
And his famous crossing of the Alps with elephants.
Oh, yeah.
It just sounds like something out of a movie.
It's one of the most audacious military maneuvers in history.
It is.
I mean, can you imagine
marching
an army complete with war elephants
I know.
over the Alps
Yeah.
in the middle of winter?
Yeah, it's a crazy.
He catch the Romans completely off guard.
Whoa.
I mean, he inflicted a series of devastating defeats on Roman legions, proving that Rome was not invincible.
So they were a real threat.
Oh, yeah.
So these weren't just land battles.
Right.
I mean, I'm guessing the control of the Mediterranean Sea was
Right.
also a major factor.
Absolutely. Early on, the Carthaginians had a significant advantage at sea.
Okay.
They were a maritime power with a strong navy,
Yeah.
while the Romans were primarily a land-based force.
Okay.
But remember what we discussed earlier,
Yeah.
adaptability.
Right.
The Romans knew they had to catch up, and they did so with remarkable speed and efficiency.
So they essentially learned how to build a navy from scratch.
Well, they did more than just learn.
Okay.
They innovated.
Okay.
They studied Carthaginian ship designs.
Okay.
But they also added their own twist.
Like what?
This boarding device called the corvus.
To what?
The corvus.
Okay.
Which allowed their legionaries to grapple onto enemy ships
Okay.
and turn a naval battle into a land battle.
Oh, so they could play to their strengths.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really smart.
It was.
So they adapted their military tactics to suit this new challenge.
Exactly. They weren't afraid to think outside the box.
And it paid off.
It did. They realized that to defeat Carthage, they had to control the sea.
Yeah.
And they do so by turning naval warfare into something that they were good at.
Right.
This flexibility was key to their victory in the Punic Wars.
Okay, so they won these wars.
They did.
What kind of impact did that have on Rome's future?
It was a defining moment.
Okay.
The Punic Wars transformed Rome from a regional power.
Into a dominant force in the Mediterranean.
Wow.
It was a turning point.
Yeah.
Marking the beginning of their rise to empire.
Okay, so they've conquered their rivals. They controlled the Mediterranean.
Yep.
What's next in the Roman playbook?
Well, now they turn their attention to consolidating their power.
Okay.
And integrating the vast territories that they've acquired.
Right.
This is where the concept of Romanization truly comes into play.
Romanization.
Yeah.
So it wasn't enough to simply conquer.
No.
They wanted to create a unified and loyal citizenry across their expanding empire.
Exactly. It wasn't just about military conquest anymore.
Right.
It was about cultural integration.
So it's like they switched gears.
Yeah, you could say that
Yeah.
Romanization was this multifaceted process
Right.
involving the spread of Roman law, language,
Good.
culture, and even religion.
Throughout their conquered territories.
Yes.
Okay, so the podcast really dives into the specifics of this.
What were some of the key elements of Romanization?
Well, one key aspect was granting citizenship to conquered peoples.
Okay.
Now, this wasn't always offered right away
Right.
or to everyone,
Sure.
but it was a powerful incentive.
How so?
Well, Roman citizenship came with certain rights and privileges,
Yeah.
making it a desirable status.
So it was a way to encourage loyalty to Rome.
You got it.
Okay.
It was a way to incentivize integration
Mm-hmm.
and foster a sense of belonging.
To the Roman world.
Exactly.
Okay. And then there's the role of Latin.
Ah, yes.
As the Roman Empire expanded,
Yeah,
Latin became the common language of administration, trade, and law.
right. Throughout their territories.
So even if you weren't ethnically Roman,
Mm-hmm.
you had to learn Latin to participate in Roman society.
Pretty much.
Wow.
It facilitated communication and commerce across this vast empire.
I see.
And it wasn't just about practicality.
Okay.
It also helped to spread Roman culture and values.
Right?
I mean, imagine the impact of reading Roman literature,
Mm.
listening to Roman speeches,
Yeah.
participating in Roman legal proceedings,
Yeah.
all in Latin.
Right.
It created a common cultural ground.
It's like cultural osmosis,
Yes.
slowly but surely spreading Roman influence.
That's a great way to put it.
And it wasn't just a top-down imposition. I mean,
Yeah.
the Romans were surprisingly tolerant of local customs and religions,
They were.
as long as they didn't directly challenge Roman authority.
Right.
Right.
They even incorporated local deities into their own pantheon,
Oh.
creating a blended religious landscape.
So it's a mix of integration and adaptation,
Exactly.
creating a new cultural identity that blended Roman and local traditions.
Exactly. Romanization wasn't about erasing local cultures.
Okay.
It was about weaving them into the fabric of the Roman world.
So this strategy,
Yeah.
combined with their military might and political savvy,
Right.
is what allowed the Roman Empire to flourish for centuries.
Is.
But as we know,
Yeah.
even the mightiest of empires
Yeah.
eventually fall.
They do.
So what were some of the factors that led to the decline of the Roman Empire?
Well, that's a complex question
Sure.
with no easy answers.
Of course.
But one key factor was their vast size
Okay.
and the challenges of managing such a sprawling empire.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But we'll delve into the decline of Rome.
Okay.
Into the deep dive.
At another time.
Yeah.
Okay.
For now, let's shift our focus back to the cultural impact of their expansion.
Okay.
Because even though the empire itself eventually crumbled,
Yeah.
its legacy lived on.
Right. And we'll get into that
We will.
right after the break.
So it's amazing to think about, the lasting impact the Romans had on Western civilization.
It really is.
Even though their empire eventually, crumbled.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what aspects of their culture were so enduring
Mm-hmm.
and how they managed to spread their influence so effectively.
Well, one thing that's particularly interesting about Romanization
Yeah.
is that it wasn't just a one-way street.
Yes, they spread their language, laws, and customs.
Right.
But they also absorbed elements from the cultures they encountered.
Interesting.
It was a much more dynamic process
Okay.
than just imposing their will on conquered people.
So they weren't just taking, they were also giving
Exactly.
and adapting along the way.
Yeah, think back to their military strategies.
Okay.
They weren't afraid to adopt enemy tactics if they proved effective.
All right.
And it was the same with their cultural approach.
Okay.
They were pragmatic and recognized that incorporating elements of local cultures could actually strengthen their hold on power.
The podcast uses the term cultural exchange program
Yeah,
to describe Romanization. What are your thoughts on that analogy?
I think it's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
It emphasizes that there was give and take.
Mm-hmm.
For example, think about Roman religious practices.
Yeah.
They absorbed gods and goddesses from all over their empire,
Right.
integrating them into their own pantheon.
Oh, wow.
This helped to create a sense of shared religious identity,
Right.
even while respecting local beliefs.
Yeah, it's like they were saying your gods are welcome here too.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this approach wasn't limited to religion.
Okay.
You can see it in their architecture, their art, and even their cuisine.
Right.
Roman culture became this fascinating blend of influences
Yeah.
from all corners of their empire.
So they were conquerors, but they were also borrowers and adapters.
They were.
And that adaptability is a key theme we see throughout their history.
Mhm.
And a major reason why they were able to maintain such a vast and diverse empire for so long.
It's true.
But it's important to acknowledge that Romanization
Yeah.
wasn't always a peaceful or entirely voluntary process, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's crucial to remember that this expansion came at a cost.
right.
There were certainly instances of resistance and conflict,
Of course.
and not everyone benefited equally from Roman rule.
Right.
Some cultures were more readily absorbed than others,
Yeah.
and there were undoubtedly those who resented Roman authority.
It's a reminder that the story of the Roman Empire,
Yeah.
like any historical narrative, is complex and multifaceted.
Exactly.
But despite these complexities, the
Right.
fact that Roman culture and influence spread so widely
Mhm.
is a testament to their ability to create a system that,
Yeah.
for many, was seen as preferable to the alternatives.
Right. They offered stability, infrastructure, and opportunities for advancement
Right.
within their vast network.
So as we wrap up this deep dive
Okay.
into Roman expansion, what are some key takeaways
Mhm.
you'd like listeners to ponder?
Well, I think it's fascinating to consider how the Romans managed to build such a lasting legacy.
Yeah.
One that continues to influence us today.
Absolutely.
Their story highlights the power of adaptability, the importance of strategic thinking,
Right.
and the enduring influence of culture.
It also makes you think about how modern nations and organizations
Yeah.
wield their influence.
Right.
Are there any parallels to Rome's strategies of political maneuvering, infrastructure development, and cultural assimilation?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And one worth pondering. I mean, look at the modern world.
Yeah.
Globalization is, in many ways, a form of cultural exchange,
Right.
albeit on a much larger and faster scale.
Right.
And the importance of infrastructure in projecting power
Mm-hmm.
is as relevant today as it was in Roman times.
So even though the Roman Empire is ancient history,
Yeah,
its lessons are still relevant in our modern world.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the Romans offer valuable insights
Mm-hmm.
into the dynamics of power expansion and cultural influence,
Right.
dynamics that are still at play today.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on.
Okay.
We've uncovered some fascinating aspects
You have.
of how the Roman Empire achieved such remarkable expansion.
Yeah.
It's a story of ambition, strategy, and adaptation, one that continues to captivate and inspire us centuries later.
It does.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through Roman history.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive
I hope so.
and that it sparked your curiosity to explore further.
Definitely.
Until next time, keep learning and keep those brains buzzing.